I just finished a great podcast with Seth Champion. He's a homeless guy out in Wisconsin. We talked about all kinds of interesting stuff, like how do you sleep on the street when it's minus 15? He talked about getting arrested and it going viral. He also shared a lot of his spiritual experiences, which were fascinating. I'm so glad that he opened up and shared those. Really interesting. I do want to apologize for the camera angle and the eye contact. I'm still getting some stuff worked out, but basically, where I was streaming was a little bit off from my camera, but I'm going to fix that in the future. This was such great footage that I just wanted to get it released. All right, enjoy. All right, everybody. This is my friend Seth Champion. Uh, he is the champion of the homeless in Michigan, right?
Eau Claire, Wisconsin.
Eau Claire with Wisconsin, but
Yes.
possibly all around the world because you're pretty active on social media and you're definitely putting your voice out as an advocate for the homeless.
Right. Yeah. If I could have even larger effects than just local, I'd be all for that. The conversation about the homeless is deeply rooted in misnomers. It's just kind of poor language. We're just not talking about it properly. So if I could get a conversation going that isn't just like uh, the unhoused special wallflower victim stuff that we just get all the time, it would be more constructive and help, like you're saying, globally.
Yeah, I'd really like to get that conversation going because you have such a unique perspective. Because you've been homeless for quite a while, correct?
Yeah. I don't know. So you saw my first city hall speech where at the beginning I'm like, yeah, I've been homeless in and out for 17 years, which is the truth. It is. The beginning, it was definitely hard drug related. I got into heroin between like 18 and 22 or something like that, and spent a few years working really hard to get clean. But even after getting clean, I don't know. I'm autistic and I have ADHD, and I didn't really understand either of those things until more recently.
Hmm.
So that's just it's another hurdle. You know what I mean? And it's like a house of cards trying to build your life up from scratch. It
Mm.
really is.
It is. It really is. I've been going to therapy and healing from a lot of trauma, and yeah, and I think what makes it extra hard is that society is set up in a very like survival of the fittest, kind of like in a real cookie cutter type way. And to be honest, me, a lot of people out there would love to see radical change, like radical change. And, we are
Yeah.
seeing a lot of changes. And so that's encouraging. But as far as like the homeless community and your involvement, what kind of changes are you looking for?
Um, what kind of changes? Well, I was kind of just thinking about this while you were talking. There's a lot of money already there, and it just seems to get sucked up by the middlemen. It's a story we're
Hmm.
seeing kind of parroted on the federal level right now. Not to get into politics too much or anything, but it's still the same thing where there are these nonprofit NGOs acting on behalf of the taxpayer, but with no accountability like you would expect
Hmm.
from a government organization. So I mean that doesn't just apply to like foreign aid or whatever. That applies domestically to our homeless shelters and other nonprofits. So we've sort of built this homeless industrial complex that spends a lot of money to do very little work, and it's just not like accountable. It has no incentive. It's not well enough incentivized to help people. So at the end of the day, it just comes down to the staff. Some shelters are great because there's people who really care, and there's
Hmm.
others that are just kind of doing the bare minimum. So
I'm finding that that's true across the board. It doesn't matter what system you're talking about, healthcare, government, politics. There are like tons of good people in these systems, but it seems like at the highest level, somehow, like the people really pulling the strings that have the real power, um, either don't know how to, or they're struggling against the system themselves. But whatever the case, it just seems like it just seems like these systems are broken, like at the highest level. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, and so that's a great point too, because people are like, oh, there's them, like there's always a them, right? Like
Mm,
somebody
mm-hmm.
else, some bad guy, but in reality most stories don't have a them. It's really more systemic or language based. um I'll give you an example. So since my advocacy, I don't know if this has anything to do with me speaking at City Hall or anything, but the city of Eau Claire passed a vote back in November to request more ARPA funds or something like that from the
What
federal government for the homeless.
ARPA?
And
What is that?
American Rescue Plan Act, I believe.
Okay, sure I spelled that
Uh, and so I believe, based on what I've read in the local news and stuff, I've never even seen any of these people yet, but there's a news story that came out a couple days ago. So they've taken this money, I guess another $200,000 in federal funds, and created this like homeless like action thing. It's like for paid employees. They're not even from Eau Claire. I think they're like mostly from Milwaukee or something. And then like they're positioned
right.
in the news as
Whoa.
again like a homeless outreach team, but all it really seems like they intend to do is go around and clean up garbage in front of businesses or something. So it's just it's a weird dichotomy to me. Oh, here's all this money to help the homeless, and then here's four more, people making $50,000 a year to again not really greatly affect the system, as opposed to like there was a much older guy in the warming center yesterday. He has like lung and blood cancer, and
Whoa.
he has a portable oxygen concentrator that he needs like throughout the day, every day, and it failed yesterday. And that was the same time that I heard about these street ambassadors, and all I can think is like, man, you could give someone like me or one of these other uh, people already in the system that are doing good work and know the homeless population, and they could be helping these
Yes,
people.
dude.
And in situations like this, where
Right
oh my
on.
God, this guy needs this device like to sleep and live, and it's
Mm.
Saturday. You know what I mean? If we can't fix it, and we did jiggle the plug, and eventually, he said he got some sleep last night, so thank God for that.
Wow.
But
But see,
I
you
mean, if
knew that. You
if
were there. Your boots on the ground. You're in the trenches. You know that. Yeah.
right, if I had the pile of money that I couldn't touch for myself, I'd have gone right out and bought that guy another portable oxygen concentrator. It's like a
Such
no
a good
brainer.
point.
So, and it's and this the money level that I'm talking about is not even on the order of that $200,000 for that team that they just created or whatever. There's multiple agencies within just this town that, uh, for lack of a better term, pretend or minimally act as uh, outreach or a voice for the homeless. But in reality, again, it's just a bunch of people collecting a paycheck, paying their mortgage. And it's like tens of millions of dollars in a city that has, according to their biannual point in time count of the homeless in the four-county area, it's like 500 or 600 people. So I don't know. I mean, if you do basic math and you divide a few $10 million by 600 people, that's an insane amount of money. Another example is shelters often claim that it costs them X amount of dollars to house someone for the night. And it's like, okay, well, if it is just a housing issue, like that's like a month at a cheap motel for one night, one person at a shelter. Like, I don't know. I don't know. It's a complex issue. It's not that I just want to take all the money and give it to the poor. That doesn't fix their problems, because we've created this open air mental health asylum or whatever. Modern homelessness. It's kind of, I'm sorry, I'm getting on too many tangents now, but
No,
um,
you're doing fantastic. These are powerful ideas that I think need to be brought forward. And and the thing is, like, I don't want to dog any of these people because like I said, there are tons of good ones within the system, but the system itself needs change. It needs like it is interesting to me that in almost all of these sectors of working class, it's like there's a big disconnect between the people at the top and the people in the trenches, and
Yeah.
systems just can't function that way.
Compare it in my head. Obviously, I don't know how much truth there is to like this idea. I don't know the pharmaceutical industry, but classic idea, right? Pharmaceutical industry not really incentivized to cure disease because it
Mm.
kind of puts them out of business, right? The homeless
Right.
industrial complex is almost never incentivized to put themselves out of business. That's the problem. And then again, bare minimum. I don't know. Humanitarian work is really hard, and it tends to make people that go in with the best of intentions jaded, or they just can't. It'd be really hard to run a homeless shelter for 40 years. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, yeah. Some of these people that do this are absolute saints because a lot of them are not really getting paid that well.
Yes.
The ones that are kind of the lowest tier, it's still employed, but the lowest tier, it is such a grind. I mean, a total grind. Like a lot of people are having a hard time retiring even. So yeah, I can understand this. I mean, do you think that there is motivation within the homeless community itself to earn wages if they could contribute to the community?
It really depends on the individual. This is the part that I think the left does get right because everyone's case is a little bit different. But I mean, you have to imagine, like again, it's a house of cards. You're skating on thin ice. Once you get poor, everything gets really expensive, and it's so hard to build up from that. So
Mm,
the shelters that I see do the best, they do individual care, as in like it's not an emergency shelter where like there's a lottery system to get in like there is here in Eau Claire. You go in and there's, let's say, case managers there. And if you want to stay there longer than a week, you have to see a case manager. If you're seeing a case manager and you show up every day, you have a spot to sleep. And then that case manager sits with you and basically does like a triage with you, right? Oh, maybe like many cases are like what you're talking about. They'd be like a green or a red or a yellow tag where, oh, maybe this person just needs some IDs and a place to sleep and work for a while. There are many cases like that, and many cases that aren't like that on the street are because these people sit in the system for so long they become jaded, they feel ugly and unloved, that they're bums all of a sudden. And
mm,
that has its own mental toll. So when the system doesn't provide people with easy avenues to build themselves a new life, they end up, trying drugs or falling into horrible depression. And then speaking of triage and those people can, if we provided, basic case management services for people, we could refer them to like good psychs or drug treatment or whatever. But the system in many places, here in Eau Claire included, doesn't do that at all.
right. Because like I have a lot of mental health issues within my family and like I struggle with depression and it is so brutal and like I can't imagine struggling with depression and then having to live in a homeless situation where your self-esteem is really beat down and you're viewed so negatively by so many people. It just seems like yeah, I mean how do these people that have mental health issues, how are they getting help?
I mean, they're not. Again, I'll circle back to
Oh man, like
my
that's a
statement of like
broken system.
open air mental health asylums. That's when we talk about the homeless. Some people get caught up on like, well, some people are just sleeping in their car and stuff. But again, a broken discussion, right? Because when we talk about the homeless, what we're really talking about are the people with like walkers filled with bags of stuff, and
Right.
shelters with large crowds of people outside, or people, smoking weed in this alleyway or whatever. You know what I'm saying? It's
Hmm.
the visible stuff, the stuff people don't want to see is really what they're talking about. And those are the people again that are kind of suffering full time under a system that's not offering them an out.
Let me ask you this. If you're like an average person and say you're walking down the street and there's a homeless person that, might have some mental health issues, like you can kind of see that they're struggling. I mean, I've seen them kind of like talking out loud and all.
Yeah.
What can you do to show some care? Um, like what can we yeah, I feel like people get so awkward around homeless, and that's
Yeah.
that's me included, and I just want to know, like, from you all's perspective, what can we do to make you feel like valuable, human, dignity, all of those things.
Um, I mean, my best answer for you is just pretend it's not the thing that you think it is and just say hello and wave and just be, oh, that's
Hmm.
a normal human. Because at the end of the day, most of these people out here are normal humans, even if they are, talking out loud or
Right.
dirty or whatever. Or, oh, that guy just picked up a cigarette butt. That's a bum for sure. And then it's weird. And uh, people who are homeless tend to be exceptional in certain ways, and they tend to be more sensitive to nonverbal communication. Again, it's just a deepening of that sort of being estranged from society. And the more estranged you are from society while living in it, the more crazy you seem. But insanity doesn't exist outside of society. If we all lived alone in the woods, nobody would be crazy. um,
Right, right, yeah, you're making such a good point, because I stop and wonder often, like, how many even mental health issues are there because we're not in our natural environment, like a small tribe. Can you imagine? Like, so I saw on your Twitter, or I should say X, where you're learning bushcraft skills.
oh, that was
Rewind the
that was
clock like a couple
yeah, that
hundred years, and put you in a small tribe, and you're like a top level um, person in that tribe. But it just so happens that the way society's set up, a lot of these communal, tribal, like, super valuable skills just aren't. It's really unfortunate. There's just not a good place for them, and there needs to be.
right. And the post you're referring to, I mean, I had this sort of spiritual experience last year that led me to start doing this advocacy. And just like I don't know, I personally I feel like I woke up enough last year to basically not be dysfunctional in society anymore. But at the same time, it was like my God, or something was asking me, hey, I showed you the answer, now go fight for the other people. I don't know, it feels like what I'm here for at this point. I don't like true purpose.
That's
But
incredible.
thank you.
Incredible,
But
man. Oh boy, I love those stories. We got to get into
and
that.
right, no, we can do that. Well, and the point of me saying that is the bushcraft, the campfire, sleeping in the woods. Like, man, I wasn't even depressed. I was just completely isolated. Just me and wet socks and a campfire. Man, it's terrible and wonderful. Like, I don't know. I don't know. It
Wow.
was it was an enlightening experience to sleep in the woods. It didn't last forever. I didn't build like a permanent encamp. Well, actually, I basically had my spiritual experience and rolled it all up in a tarp and threw it away. I was like, okay, time to go do whatever it was. And I kind of lost. I shouldn't say I lost my mind in June and July of last year, but it's when it all started, and it was a whole thing. So many signs and events and visions and interactions that just kind of reinforced that this, for lack of a better term, magical thing was happening to me.
Yeah, my awakening was so brutal. It was like, or I should say intense. It was jarring to my mental health, and I like all of the words that you're saying like perfectly resonate with me. It just seems like there's some kind of divine energy, and people all over the globe are having these kind of experiences. Like, I know what you're talking about, and it ends up being life changing. Um,
There's a deep truth, and that truth comes with a capital T, and that truth is written in the margins of all great art and stories and dogma and societies and language. It's there in the margins. And I don't know exactly, again, what I did specifically to trigger it, other than I think uh, kind of confessing to the stars was maybe the biggest part of it for me.
can you unpack that? You're saying like there's a capital T truth in the
Yeah,
margins, and now
yeah.
are you talking about kind of like reading between the lines, like the pattern behind the shadow? Like what do you mean by that?
Oh, there's a great meme that I didn't save, but it had the Chad guy in it, and then it had like all the religious symbols, and the Chad guy's like, "Lord, what a fool I was to not see your handwriting in the margins of all of these," or something like
To
that. And
recognize
it's
the pattern across everything.
right. If there is a divine creator, and there is, he's been telling the same story in different ways to different people in different places. Like it's
Yes.
it's not it's not complicated. All the major, spiritual avenues kind of lead you to the same place of treating yourself and others well.
Mhm.
Ta-da.
Yeah. Yeah. Huge focus on love, um, wisdom, all of these virtues. Yeah, you're right. You're right. It's simple, and what we did with it was make some kind of institution and just create a whole nother tribe of people to fight against another tribe of people. It just doesn't make sense, man.
Language is important, but sometimes it fails us. And I think,
Mm.
you talk about depression. One of my recent sort of shower thoughts on depression that keeps coming back to me, is depression is kind of fundamentally just a lack of hope for the future. It's like you're not building something in your head at a later date, and if you're not doing that, then you're just stuck here now. And that's not the same kind of presence as like something more meditative, right? It's just like, what am I doing? I don't know. That's miserable.
Yeah, it
That is
is.
miserable.
And it's why I've speculated that this reality that we're in is kind of like some kind of purgatory where it can either be hell or heaven based on your perspective. I mean, Jesus was always saying like you have eyes but you don't see. So it's like something that you have to see that lifts you out of the hell of suffering.
Yeah. Well, I mean, how would we know if we are meant to go on past this world, this existence? How would we know what true joy and love and truth and all of that are if we don't experience hate and pain and lies and so on and such forth? If we don't learn down here to take the supreme power of free will and interact well with others using that power down here, what do you think it's like if we go up there with the big man, and we have all the power of that place together with other people? If you're toxic, you just don't go there. It's like the one bad apple kind of ruins the bunch, right? You can be a bad person. Anything is forgivable, but if you can't if you can't repent. Sorry, I went to church today. I'm kind of in church brain mode. But
No,
if you can't
let's go for
repent,
it.
or metanoia is an even better word that I like. Kind of means the same thing.
Right, a
If you can't
change of
think,
mind.
if you're not willing to put in the work to choose what to think about, what has meaning, um, what more is there for you? Not much. I think you just kind of get recycled back. I don't think anything is
Right.
wasted. None of this is out of hate, but that being said, I don't know. Yeah, hell is real, but I think it's down here.
Yeah, yeah, and in that concept of recycling, because like I don't believe in the fundamentalist version of hell, but like if we look at how Jesus talked about it, like dead branches being burned, I got to thinking about that. What you're doing is you're just taking something that's dead, and that can be something inside somebody. I'm not saying that some body is actually dead, and that stuff is burned, and that carbon just goes up and it goes into another tree, so it's just this big like
Exactly.
recycling. Yeah,
Yes. Yes.
that's
The
the way
the,
I see
the
it.
God's a farmer of souls.
Right on. I like that.
If the crop's bad, it just gets
Yeah,
picked and thrown back out in the field to
yeah.
fertilize the next batch.
And I got to thinking what you were talking about, how this reality can be almost like a school, like a training, because power is not a blessing. Power can it just enables you to go further and harder in the direction you're going. So I do think that before we graduate, like it is important that we know how to take power and like go in a good direction, because otherwise you just take your power and you put yourself deeper into hell. I mean, that's kind of the story of the celebrity, or the high level person that's not happy, and we like to dog those people, but to be honest, if I was in that position and I had lots of power at certain times in my life, I would have done the exact same thing, just barrel down this road of emptiness and self destruction.
Well, and outside of traditional power, right? Like systems and structures, there's tremendous power in every single person's everyday life. My brain always returns to my favorite speech is called "This Is Water" by David Foster Wallace, and he talks about being in a frustrating situation like waiting in line at the grocery store, and again, it's about metanoia, repentance, same idea, that to be able to stand there and listen to some lady yell at her kid and and all this other stuff that you got to deal with, and choose what to think about. Go, this moment is precious. These people are precious.
Right,
I
right.
am, to sonder, to realize that for other people are living their main storyline and you're just a background actor, or um uh, to offer someone a banal platitude like a good morning. Um, Sometimes that has life and death importance, and so our every interaction, every vibration that goes out from us to others to change causality has tremendous effect, tremendous power. I'm always super careful on X. I mean, I don't have a ton of followers. My stuff doesn't hit a billion, eyeballs or whatever, but I still know that it could just hit that one person and do so much.
Yeah, it means a lot to me. Like
Yeah,
the
thank you.
stuff you post. Yeah, and I've noticed that there are a lot of unseen people that are posting the most beautiful stuff.
It's new for me, and I think it's new for a lot of people. Now, this is the part where I start speculating. I'm not talking about spiritual stuff that I've experienced, just stuff I'm thinking about. Man, it seems like I'm not the only one, and a lot of people are waking up right now. It's kind of
Yeah.
weird.
Oh yeah. Yeah, dude, it's crazy. It's all over the place. I like
Yeah.
globally. I'm glad that you say that, because sometimes I'm like, is this just me? But it does feel like all over the place. Like people are changing internally at a rate I've never seen before.
Another way that I like to think of this is, isn't it fascinating that you and I are both alive in this time? We could be living in the techno singularity. So I mean, it just like, what does that mean? Why are we here in this? Like, there's just a lot there, and I don't really have something to go with that. I don't have a good punchline or anything for that one, but it's just like,
That is the punchline. I think after you go through this awakening, and I mean it just it dude, it feels like the veil's getting thinner. It feels like the powers that be are being shaken. Like there is a definite energy shift, and I don't know where it's going, but it's going somewhere powerful and somewhere fast. Heck yeah, man. And that's why I'm kinda like you. I just wanna do my part. Like, I don't think it matters what you're doing. I just want to do something, like, within my, sphere of influence. That's all that make it, because it seems like it's all hands on deck, like casting the nets over, to use a biblical metaphor there.
I mean, yeah, to tie that back into our earlier conversation of what do you do when you see the bum on the street? To treat him as human as possible. Put in the mental work to go, that's a human being that deserves probably more respect than I would normally give them. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
And that'll help people more than a pair of gloves or a can of soup any day. any day.
Yeah, I've been trying to just be warm and give a smile, but I'm glad that you emphasize that because it helps encourage me because it doesn't always seem like it does much, but I think that there's something about that kind of warm energy that it's universally human that it touches us. It doesn't matter who you are. That's interesting.
Well, and I live, in western Wisconsin here in Eau Claire, where, even the bums will hold the door for you. The Midwest nice is real. And I know it's different in other cities. I recently watched a Channel 5, it's Andrew Callahan, it's like a YouTube thing. He kind of does these like underground sort of news reports on different situations like protests and stuff like that. And there's one where he went to uh, I think it was Philadelphia, somewhere in like Pennsylvania, and they have like this huge trank issue, which is like some terrible horse tranquilizer drug that everyone's using on the streets, and it's like causing sepsis. So all these people are just like they look like zombies or something like that.
Man.
And even in a place like that, if you really stop to notice in the video, these guys, this camera crew, they're just walking around and talking to people, and all these people who are in, maybe some of the darkest corners of modern American society, they're just people. They're just talking to them like people, and they're like, and they just tell them everything. Like, oh yeah, this is what I do. This is what it's like out here. This is why I came out here, and it's no different. Anywhere you go, it's no different. Struggling
That's
people want to share their story. They want to work through their problems, and they want to get somewhere better. But if they don't address, if someone doesn't help them address their problems, they're toast.
well, and you know what's so interesting is that the divine, we see this pattern in Jesus, especially but the divine seems so, man, just so unbelievably compassionate to everyone because I don't, in society we put people on this really weird hierarchy, but how can you even put someone on a hierarchy when you don't know where they started? I mean, when someone's reincarnating into the depths of hell, like, it is hard to crawl out of
It's
hell, man.
it's a great point, right? Because like I can't compare myself to someone who's you know as well adjusted as I am, but is rich and successful because they haven't gone through the pain and suffering that I have. And there's just a lot. I've seen a lot. I've been through a lot.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've been thinking a lot about how pain, which can be the most evil thing that happens to you, kind of like the crucifixion, can simultaneously be the most glorious thing that happens to you when it's transfigured through divine healing. It's like your pain becomes your power.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
incredible.
It's kind of a requirement for the roller coaster has to go up in order to go down, and the farther up it goes, the farther down it goes, the more fun it is, right? So maybe that metaphor doesn't work in the sense of going down is the fun part, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I do. It's like this Joseph pattern of where he looked out at the people that wronged him the most and said everything that you meant for evil, the divine worked for good. And it's like, wow, there's something especially beautiful about that, and it seems like there's a divine energy for that kind of healing and transfiguration going on right now. I'm just like we were talking earlier, see left and right people just like growing just so fast internally. It's insane. I love it.
Kind of holding my breath to wait and see what happens.
Yeah, so your experience, I've gotten snippets of it, and I
Yeah.
know it is wild, and it really resonated with me because I experienced some of the same types of things, but the way that you experienced them was extraordinary. Can you go into that?
Yeah, yeah, and I see others are having, similar experiences, all the time now to what I had. Mine was really big, and it does feel like the thing told me that mine was kind of a bigger deal than most, whatever that means. I really don't. It's like a
Yeah,
real
it's
sort
a
of
big
uh,
deal, dude.
the whole thing was a big head trip, honestly. But so I'll give you the concise version. I'm still working on being able to do this because it's really hard to convey sort of the whole thing without somebody taking one detail out of it and going, well, if you think that person wasn't human, then why? What was their phone number? Who they? Oh, so anyways.
Right.
So
I know. Mine was the same way.
so is about this time last year, right? So it's March now. By like May, uh, like all through last winter and early spring, I was really depressed. I would leave the homeless shelter here and go to the university and just kind of play on my laptop all day. Classic old Seth. I moved back up here from Austin, Texas, because the homeless scenario down there is just abysmal. There's just nothing. And then on top of that, my dad died last year, and I could
Mhm.
tell by last winter that I wanted to be closer. I don't have a lot of money and agency to get around, so being an hour away from where my parents retired, um, seemed like the move, even if I, was kind of a hot mess myself. So all that happens, right? And I stayed at the shelter here. There's only one emergency shelter for like single people here in Eau Claire. And I got banned after being there for 5 or 6 months just with no issues whatsoever. And I got banned because man, some old guy asked a staffer for a coat. Like he was cold and the building was cold. God, it was like 50 in there. And the staffer freaked out on me because I pointed out that it was cold and she was wearing sweatpants and stuff. It's a whole nother thing. But yeah, so I got banned. So I started living out in the woods, like you were saying. That was when the bushcraft stuff started. That was May of last year. And that was the first time I've ever just like been like a woods hermit. That's like a very different kind of homelessness that was new to me. Um, and so as that was happening, I don't know, I started to feel better. I was taking lion's mane supplement. Like I said, very carnal being out in the woods. You can do whatever you want. The fire is there. I don't know. There's something deeply spiritual about camping. I never understood camping until recently, but or until, that. So I'm doing that for about a month, and I start seeing other clients of the shelter who also got wrongfully banned. It just seemed like they're kind of ramped up, and they've still been doing this, just banning people willy nilly, even when it's 0 degrees outside and stuff. They'll be like, "Oh, you fell asleep in the eating area? That's a month ban." Like the shelter is garbage here right now. Not to get back into the incentives thing, but so I saw that, and then I saw an employee, the best employee there, she got fired for like giving stuff out like coffee to people who didn't stay there and stuff like that. And so that got me riled up enough where I went, okay, I feel like I should try to be like the whistleblower on this. I wrote a very long letter. It was like maybe one of the better things I'd written up to that point. Uh, very concise, good punctuation, ethos, pathos, and something. Anyways, I put a lot of effort into it and nobody responded. I sent it off to every local news outlet, every city council member, and like the admin Catholic diocese for the shelter or whatever. Nobody responded. So after a week or two, I walked into City Hall, and the city manager's office was like, "Oh, well, this sounds like a thing where you could speak at the open town hall." And so that's on my YouTube. Yeah, that's my first city hall speech, and it's a banger. I don't know how much good it actually did, but well, I went in there and basically just dropped bombs for 3 minutes. I kind of trying to work myself back up to delivering something even better soon. But so that was coming up again. No spiritual experience up to this point. Just being out in the woods, getting kind of riled up. You're finding some purpose, right?
Mhm.
And a suggestion somebody gave me uh, before I gave the speech, like a day or two before, just some random person. They were like, "Oh, if you're gonna do that, you should practice speaking. You can just go lay down, at your campsite later and just tell your life story into your phone." And when I did that, I was just laying under the stars, and telling my whole life story again, mushroom supplement out, out in the fire. And as I'm telling my life story, I am speaking things that occurred, things I did, things I thought, or whatever, that I just never vocalized. Even as someone who got clean
Mm,
through a 12-step program and worked the
it's
12 steps and
powerful.
worked through a lot of my big resentments, there were still just some things that they weren't drug and alcohol related or whatever, but things that I guess were something. Because man, I told my whole life story, and I kind of laid there in the stars, and I got kind of restless. I deleted it, and I walked off into the woods, and man, the sky. I walked for like 5 6 miles. I'm way out in this like nature path, and the sky. I don't know if it was the moon or what, but there's like it was like a spear of fire or something, and the whole sky turned into like fire. And after the fire, it was like gears and numbers. It was like I don't know, like
Wow. You saw the orbs. I've seen them too. I've had wild experiences. You know the videos that are going around of the orbs? You saw something like that?
no, I wouldn't really call this an orb. It was very biblical. Like the whole sky turned into fire, and then it was like
Whoa.
I had to I had to pass through this tremendous heat. I still don't really know what all this part means, but like there was this tremendous heat, just absolutely tremendous. And then again, there was like it was like gears and numbers, like seeing the code or something out like that meme that goes around a lot now on esoteric Twitter where it's the guy peeking out from the dome. And so I walked all the way out to this rest stop after seeing that, just going, what is going on? Like I was screaming at the clouds. Like I thought at first it's got to be like some government thing or I got dosed with some, like I'm sitting there as this pragmatist agnostic guy or whatever trying to process this whole thing. But man, that night I laid down at the rest stop. I stayed up all night. I got bit by hundreds of mosquitoes and ticks. I don't know what that means either. I've never seen so many ticks before. It was really weird. And as I laid there, it was like I would I would I would think of like hard questions and I would immediately get answers like ineffable questions, like meaning of life stuff, quite a lot of stuff. And I don't even remember a lot of it super well. That night was then preceded by like 3 more nights of signs like this. The second night, the river flooded. And so as I walked down to my campsite, jokingly, as someone who grew up Lutheran, in my head, I'm like, well, if I am seeing God, I might as well, the the walkway, the path was flooded by an inch or two, and it's hot, right? It's like June, so I took my sandals off and I walked in the water, and there was like a presence. There wasn't a lot on the second day, but it was definitely so it was a lot. It was just emotion. On the third day is probably the most interesting one, like terrestrially. Um, I was again walking at night to the campsite, and as I made my way there, my music started getting really weird. I was listening to YouTube music on my phone, and it just started glitching. But I didn't take it out of my pocket, and so I'm listening to my music getting weirder and weirder and weirder. It kind of stops being music, and then all of a sudden, there was like silence. It just goes dead silent for like 30 seconds, and for
Wow.
some reason, I was like, I just, I said hello. It kind of seemed like suddenly someone was there, and lo and behold, I got a response. I pull my phone out of my pocket, and there's a lady, like on a video call, like you and I are doing right now, and she's dressed real sharp. She's like in an office setting. She's got olive skin and dark hair, dark eyes, but I can't really look at her. And she's sitting there talking to me, and I can tell we're talking because the cadence was perfect. It's why I took my phone out and looked at the screen right away. Because when I said hello, the response wasn't like hello in English, but like, I don't know, the cadence or timing was perfect. And the whole conversation was like that. None of it was like, I don't even remember her mouth moving. It was like booms and echoes, like entire books or stories and narratives. And music and blah, I don't
Mm,
know. And I like vaguely, this only lasted about 30 seconds. I kind of babbled back, and towards the end of it, for some reason this was the most important part. um I looked her in the eye, and it was so hard. It was so hard to look at her, and when I looked at her, she smiled, and then the call was over. And I don't know. I
man. God, that's beautiful, dude. That's fucking beautiful. I love it. The divine feminine is making huge statements.
So, like, in the moment, other than at the time my considerations that it was maybe something else, something external, um, I really did see the Trinitarian form of God. So on the first night, I saw like raw God stuff, right? Fire and gears and numbers is very biblical. And the second night, it was all feelings and emotions while I walked in or on water. I don't know. Jesus was there. I got no better answer for you, and nothing else really happened. That one was pretty simple. And that lady on the third night, I'm convinced now that that was the Spirit. And the whole conversation was just her telling me her name. I didn't really understand what the conversation was until the call ended, because it was again, it was all like booms and echoes, and I, I don't know,
Have
something not.
you have you heard of Chris Bledsoe? Are you
uh
familiar with that name?
I've heard the name.
Okay,
Maybe I've seen the X
he's
profile.
he's a really wild experiencer that has had interactions with this entity that he called the lady, and that that phrase, the lady,
The
has kind
lady.
of gone out into the ether, and people are starting to use it. And I mean, just here's just a perfect thing that affirms what you were saying. He he believes that the Holy Spirit is actually like a divine feminine.
Yes, yeah, she is. Yeah, and again, so the whole thing after this bizarre pseudo conversation, whatever it was, I realized all she did was introduce herself, and I can't repeat her name down here. I can't speak it. The closest thing I have was like Azazaza or something like that. I called her ZZ in my head, and then later, someone started texting me who appeared to be a scammer, but my gosh, it was not a scammer.
It was a
They
sync.
responded perfectly. It
Yeah.
was her again, and her name on there was Sophie Muller. So Sophie again is, it's another reference. There's a whole religious thing with that, and I think it's just
Whoa.
more dots to connect to go, hey, yeah, dummy, that was the Spirit. She was talking to you. My God, she's gorgeous. She's gorgeous. Her
That's what
skin,
Chris says. I'm like, man,
her,
come on. We need a picture of this entity.
her skin, when I saw her, her skin was like deeply olive, but something about it shone or sparkled, kind of like catching light from the facets of a diamond or something. Again, she was really hard to look at.
Wow, dude. That's the lady, man. I mean, to a T. That's everything that I don't know if, again, I don't know if you've heard of Chris Bledsoe, but if you look into his story in his book, UFO of God,
I love that, because I mean, like, what are UFO? What is the UFO story but just a modern construct for having a spiritual experience?
there you go. Exactly. And it goes back to the orbs that people have been seeing. And whether or not there's physical entities, I don't know, but this fear mongering is bullshit. These entities are spiritual, and they are wonderful, dude. Like, every interaction I've had with them has been healing. I mean, so powerful. It touches you deep, like deep, and I can hear it in your voice. Something changed. You'll never be the same after that. That's the divine. Like, that's the spirit of Christ right there.
So yeah, sometimes when I tell this story or talk about specifically that like third night of like meeting Sophie or ZZ or whatever, um, that part's really emotional. If I think about it, maybe not in this sort of like narrative sense where we're having this conversation, but a lot of times it just makes me cry or
Yeah.
whatever. I don't know. I had a little bit of it in church this morning with the
Mhm.
piano. Um, but it's she's scarred me for life in the best way possible.
Yeah. Yeah, she touched you deep, dude. Oh, man. I love that. That has divine energy all over it. Ah, beautiful.
But again, so I still didn't take any of that at face value, right? So the third night finishes and like that conversation finishes and I'm going to sleep like thinking, what is this government stuff or drug stuff? Have I lost? Is this what happens? You stay homeless long enough and you just become some ultra crazy guy. You start, like am I developing schizophrenia or something like that? So I'm trying to treat the whole thing pragmatically, especially from the get-go. Now, on the fourth night, as I was walking to camp, um, I don't, I don't know. I got baptized by God. No one was there. I went and sat on a boat launch by the river, and I'm sitting there listening to like classic rock, and it's really like resonating with me. But man, Elton John's "Someone Save My Life Tonight" came on, and like it was there again, just like the phone call or the fire in the sky. Something was like, get in. Like this is like I don't know. I've been baptized. I think I've been baptized twice, other than this or whatever. This was different. It was no get in and yeah, I don't know. So all those 4 days really struck me, but I still treated the whole thing very pragmatically. I went into City Hall, I gave that speech right after all that happened, and and I sat there trying to like address what was happening. But as that happened, a few things happened. Synchronicity just went insane
Mm,
constantly.
me too.
Everywhere
Yep.
I went was somewhere I needed to be, someone I needed to talk to, or something I needed to see to just continue to prove to me, hey, this is real, dummy. So I need you to treat this seriously. My ego doesn't want to do any of this.
It's so radical, man. It just jars like all of it takes your mental block box and just blows it the fuck open. And I think the syncs and different things are just to help us keep it together because I remember that exact like, am I crazy? But this doesn't feel crazy. Like this feels amazing. Like if I was crazy, I feel like I would be I don't know, like losing freedom and getting more depressed, but I was getting free from stuff at the same
Right.
time that I was feeling kind of crazy, but it was only crazy because society is not providing examples of this stuff.
Right. It feels crazy, but like it's not. It's not. There was never paranoia. It was all pronoia. So after those 4 days, like through July 21st, up until my birthday, which was also a full moon, which did weird magic. There were so many signs, like all the way up until my birthday. Um, Somebody again, a scammer started texting me, who again I think was just the lady I spoke to initially on the phone, delivering not only like weird cryptic messages that I guess were pushing me in the right direction, but like the reason I knew it was not a scammer right away is like I would think thoughts or feelings and then and she doesn't talk to me through that anymore. She only did that for a little while, but um she would respond to previous messages with emojis when I was thinking a thought perfectly, just like the phone call where I said hello and then the response was perfectly timed. And there's just so many other signs to go with that. Animals got really weird. I mean, they're still kind of weird now that I'm paying attention, but back then, especially, it was kind of Disney princess mode on animals sometime. God, every time the rain matched my emotions here in Eau Claire perfectly during that June and July period to the point where, like, I would feel sad, and then, like, even a sun shower would put a single drop of rain on my cheek. Shit, it did that like 12 times. Like, at some point, you got to go, that's not normal.
Yeah, yeah, there's this weird like syncing up with nature that feels absolutely divine. And what's unusual, like I remember in in the context of my experience, like even like little children and stuff were especially drawn to me. It's like they can sense that energy, and I think animals can too. It's quite unusual. Um, but it's like, yes, we need that in the world. I'm just so I'm so tired of the system. You know, I appreciate everybody that has worked hard to make the world a better place, but the more the divine invades Earth, the happier I get. This is where it's at, bro.
I'd agree. I 100% agree. I want more divine to kind of cap off the story, right? So I started advocating. I started using social media. You if you go back far enough on my ex, you'll be like, yeah, this guy kind of just started using his account and being all philosophical and esoteric back in middle of July, while I was still seeing some signs and stuff. Um, that being said, that advocacy, I mean, I don't know. I have a viral arrest that happened at a local news station on a YouTube called Code Blue Cam. It's got like 1 million views on it.
Whoa.
And there were a number of other misdemeanor arrests where, I don't know, if the police don't know what to do with you and you're homeless, but they want to tell you you're wrong, they basically give you a misdemeanor disorderly conduct. They'll even go so far as to kind of like escalate you into justifying that. I've seen that too. Um,
Huh.
that being said, when I went to court for some of these misdemeanors, the court decided that an order of no contact for the only homeless shelter was a good idea. So I ended up being stuck even after that, like however long that stupid ban was for that, advocating for that guy's coat originally. Just got extended indefinitely because of the court order. The shelter, even once my ban was up, they were like, well, there's a court order now. Um, so I've been stuck outside all winter, basically.
Whoa.
Yeah, like an entirely new, like, oh, you thought learning the bushcraft was hard. Well, how about sleeping on pavement outside?
Oh, man, I've worked in like -10 once, and it was crazy. I can remember in my insulated water bottle, so the water was still, around 60 degrees or whatever. I could pour it out and just watch it freeze over the hood of my car just instantly, just instant.
Well, and it hurts others who are less well adjusted, for lack of a better term, than I, or less able to prepare themselves. Not that it still doesn't bite you sometimes, but you get the right gear, some hand warmers, and a good sleeping bag, and insulate yourself off the ground and stuff. But again, uh, you're always on thin ice, right? Like, oh, well, what happens if your socks are so worn out that they're like damp? Then your feet get a different kind of cold, and or what if your coat's really warm but your pants are cold, so you're freezing and you zip up your coat, but then all of a sudden, like, your core is sweating. So it's always something out here.
Hey, do you we're we're right about an hour, I think. So I wanted to I wanted to get like your socials. I mean, do you have like a Venmo? How can people help? How can they connect with you?
I,
Uh,
I would suggest just go to my X. So I'm x.com/T3H Surge, Surge.
okay, I'll put the
Um,
links in the description.
and on there, there is the tips button, which gives people the option to, I mean, if they really want to use like Bitcoin or something like that. My Cash App is in there. I think that's the best way. And I also have my PayPal linked as my like account link. You know what I'm talking about? Like, you link to a website on there. So it's all up there at the top of my profile. Tips are greatly appreciated. And when I do get a decent amount where I have more than enough for myself, then I'm going out of my way to try to help others out here on the street. And I'll be honest with you, sometimes that really is just going out buying a cheap bag of pipe tobacco and rolling everybody a cigarette for a
Right
day or
on.
two.
I
Or
love it. I love it.
I get my food stamps. If I see a guy and we're going to the store, I'll buy him. You know what I mean? It's
People need things to give them hope, and that's one of those
right,
things. Yeah,
right. Humanity.
humanity.
Um, I remember when it was warm last year and this whole thing started, there were a few times where I went with some homeless people to a bar, and you go, oh, we shouldn't take a homeless guy. Homeless guys shouldn't be going to the bar. That's like, my gosh, we sat down, we had like one beer, And I'm just sitting there like looking at, the other guy like, hey, at least we're human for an hour or something.
Right,
You know what I
right.
mean? It wasn't even like a get drunk thing. If people want to get drunk, we go to Quick Trip and go to the park or something. But
Yeah, I'm laughing to myself because I remember that I think it was Dave Chappelle. He had that bit where he was like, I thought about giving money to this homeless guy, and then I was like, no, I'll probably use it for drugs and alcohol. And then I thought, no, that's what I'm gonna use it for. So I'm just gonna give it to him. I'm like, yeah, right on, dude. It's called being human. Yeah,
I'm not even much of a drinker, but occasionally I get the wild hair up my butt, and I'm like, man, I probably shouldn't be wasting my money, a few dollars on this drink when it could be doing something else. Then I leave the store and I see everybody else kind of doing the same thing, and I'm like,
yeah,
oh yeah, this is just normal, right?
yeah. You
Like to
gotta
have a
live.
couple drinks, yeah, it's just normal.
Seth, man, dude, I want to keep in touch with you and do this again. This has been a wonderful conversation and just unique.
Thank you.
I think given your spirituality and your unique position within the homeless community, I mean, wow, dude. You're a unique individual, and there's no surprise that you had an experience like that. You've got definite purpose where you're at, and man, I love seeing that. It just fires me up, dude.
Something else to keep an eye on my X is
Okay.
I have this plan right now to make a series of posts about different news articles that have come out in the area in the last year about the homeless and tell you the truth. And then I'm going to put them all together, link them all together in like a big thread and pin
Y-
that thread.
Yeah,
Um,
dude.
because yeah,
Nice.
all this the news just not again. It's not. There's no good guys and bad. There's not people out to like get us. It's just weird broken conversation.
I'm gonna try to get these links put in the description so people can find you. But great talking to you, man. Stay in touch and just definitely message me if you ever need anything. That minus 15 is, whew, gosh, dude. I don't. You're one tough mofo. I tell you that.
Well, I will tell you, I'm absolutely broke today, and I'm kind of feeding my nicotine habit on the kindness of others. So I don't know.
All
You
right,
throw me enough to get a pack of cigarettes or something, I'll throw that kindness back onto the other.
I got you, bro. Yeah, I'm gonna get on there. Yeah, right on, dude. Hey, it was great talking to you, man. I loved it. I'm gonna I'll send you the link once I get everything posted.
Sounds great.
All
Thank
right,
you.
buddy. You have a great rest of your weekend.
Have a good Sunday.
See you,
Peace and
man.
love.
Bye. Love
Bye.
you.